Welcome to the Watershed Discovery Tour. Hi, I'm Dave Bell, Master Watershed Steward and a stream keeper. I live in the Tookaney Creek watershed. For those of you not familiar, Tookaney Creek turns into Tacony Creek and becomes Frankfort Creek before entering the Delaware. The Tookaney Creek watershed is between Pennypack and Wissahickon watersheds. So the purpose of this presentation is to help you think of yourself as living in a watershed rather than or in addition to a city or a town. And all you need is internet access and a curious mind. So first, some definitions. The watershed is the area of land and the body of water it drains into. Everyone lives in a watershed. And watersheds are important because human and natural activity affect water quality and the health of the ecosystems along with the animal and plant life in them. Examples of human activity including our lawn care, development, agriculture, paving over natural surfaces, introducing invasive species. Natural activity includes storms, droughts, spread of invasive plants and animals. The watersheds are defined by the points of relatively higher land, with each side of a ridge or a hill shedding or draining its rainfall and snow melt to a different body of water. When it rains, water runs off the land into the waterway. It flows into a larger waterway. The tributaries are smaller creeks or streams that feed into big ones. The smallest tributaries are called first order. When two first order creeks converge, they form a second order creek. And the Delaware is a seventh order river. Large watersheds, such as the Delaware, are often called basins. We also are familiar with the terms Delaware Valley, Lehigh Valley. Delaware is fed by more than 200 major tributaries and 2,000 minor ones. Each tributary has its own watershed, and altogether they make up the Delaware River Basin. So this website is by Environment America, and it helps you locate where you are in the Delaware Basin and which specific watershed basin you're in. So if you go to the website and then enter your address in the upper left-hand part of the screen there, just enter your address, and then that blue pinpoint will pop up showing you where you are, and the white is the highlight of your watershed. And then if you go to back to the left panel, down in the lower station there, and you one of the stressors, or one or more of the stressors, those will pop up. The red indicates impaired waterways. The red lines are impaired waterways. So then once you have the stressors, and stressors include fossil fuel and mining, fracking, industrial pollution, urban and agricultural runoff, and sewage. Those are some of the examples. So you click on those, and then once you do that, if you left click anywhere in your watershed, you'll see the name of the watershed and some information about the stressors. You can zoom in on the map to see the streets and help identify the watershed boundaries. So there you can see the white is your watershed. The grayish area is just the next watershed, and the red lines are the impaired waterways in your watershed. So the watershed boundaries are formed by relatively higher land. And that could be, it doesn't have to be a mountain, it can be just a small hill or just a higher point on the road. And if you look at the drawing, you'll see a representation there where the red line connects the three higher points of land and shows the ridge line that connects them. In this area of southeastern Pennsylvania, we have quite a few roads that were formed on top of Native American ridge trails, and now they're known as Edge Hill Road, Hillcrest Drive, Skyline Drive, names like that. So now you want to look at the map, and once you've identified some of the boundaries on your watershed, it's a good time to go outside and head uphill to find the nearest ridge or hill that separates your watershed from the neighboring one. Going downhill, you follow the water to your creek or stream. And as you're exploring the watershed, it's natural to want to connect with nature. So I encourage you to take the time to do that. Take a kid with you if you just to make sure you're having fun while you're doing it. And then back online, you want to see if you can answer these questions. How big is the watershed? They're usually measured in terms of square miles. What's the population? Is there a watershed association? And what can you learn about the history of your creek and the watershed? And I would suggest when you go to the search engine, try entering the name of your creek, but also include the word watershed. And that way you'll get information related to the creek and to the watershed, and maybe find your watershed association. This map, courtesy of the Delaware River Basin Commission, shows different land uses in the Delaware River Basin. So it's helpful to see if you can actually find one that focuses on your sub-watershed or your local watershed. Identify your local organizations that have an interest in watershed issues, such as a county soil conservation district or a township environmental advisory council. In this picture here, some of us went to meet with Representative Brendan Boyle, congressman representing parts of Philadelphia in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he's very supportive of funding for Delaware River and Bay and watershed initiatives, and we were there to thank him for his support. But one thing that happened that was really interesting was that he stopped us and just started talking about his own childhood memories of playing in Tacony Creek and how much that meant to him and how much that informs his advocacy for watersheds and waterways now. So finding a connection with somebody in a position to advocate for your watershed can really be rewarding and helpful. This is a suggested form you can use or make up your own to create a portrait of your watershed with information that you've found out. This is an essay I wrote just trying to define your living place as your watershed rather than a city or town. And I've been, for the past couple of years, when someone asks me where I live, I've been answering Tacony Creek Watershed. If I'm out of the area, I might say Delaware Watershed. And people don't always know what I'm talking about, but sometimes they answer with the name of their watershed, and it gives us something more to talk about. So I'm asking you to read this essay and then think about new ways to look at your watershed. So one of the questions I raise are, what if towns and legislative districts were defined by watersheds instead of these artificial boundaries? What would be different? What could be advantages and disadvantages? This map shows Montgomery County and its watersheds. Montgomery County's outline is in black. Part of it there is blue, is the Schuylkill River, but the watersheds are shown here. So I'm looking at this and wondering which one makes more sense, the watershed boundaries or the artificially drawn county boundaries. Here I wonder if state and local government would serve communities better if they were designed by watershed rather than those political subdivisions. For people who care about the environment, watersheds might be a more evolved way to think about environmental issues and resources. If you consider yourself a citizen of your watershed, what rights and responsibilities would that entail? So there are ways that you can take action to improve the health of your watershed, and by doing so, the health of your waterways. Your local watershed association is a good place to start. Many watershed associations sponsor stream keepers. These are volunteers who go out once or twice a month and make observations about a certain spot on your stream. You can help with cleanups. Next one, please, Brad. Okay, here are some people helping to plant riparian buffers along that's along the side of a stream. And here are people engaged in learning some more about the watershed. Your local watershed association is a good place to start, as I said. Mine is the Tacony Frankford Watershed Partnership, and they provide really great opportunities for people to get involved in meaningful ways, including stream keeping, planting, maintenance, and learning opportunities. The photo on the right shows some runoff from a construction site, and you can see that the sidewalk is covered with soil, and it's also going into the street and down the storm drain, where it ends up in Bader Creek. And I contacted the township engineer, who told me that the contractor had the proper permits and controls in place, but the controls had apparently had failed. So he went to the site, contacted the contractor, and the contractor fixed the controls, and that ended the problem of the stormwater runoff carrying soil into the creek. The photo on the left shows a street just covered with salt that was applied by a township salt truck. And there's really no snow around, so apparently there was just some idea that they really needed to cover the roads with salt for some reason. And in this case, when it rained, that salt ended up in the creek. Talk to your neighbors about watershed issues. You might find that they're connected, or you might be able to help educate them. Homeowners have a good chance to help improve habitat in the watershed property by planting native plants, installing rain barrels, things like that. And these actions help attract native pollinators and animals, but they also help slow down runoff, which gives natural systems a chance to clean the water on its way to the creek. Generally, use of pesticides, herbicides, and snow melt comes down to using less and seeing if you can find environmentally friendly products. The Isaac Walton League of America provides training for the Save Our Streams program and for Winter Salt Watch. And they also take the data that you gather and they use it, they put it to use. So it's a good, they have a couple of good programs. Keep learning about your watershed. And the ways of doing that are, here are some resources from Penn State Extension on watershed, stormwater management, and resources for teachers and students. I highly recommend the Penn State Extension Master Watershed Steward Program. It's a great training program. I learned a lot and met a lot of great people. Here are some publications, Homeowner's Guide to Stormwater Management, and resources for teachers and school administrators. These organizations have a lot of information, a lot of ways people can get involved as well. There's the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, Delaware River Basin Commission, Delaware Riverkeeper Network, Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, and my watershed group, the Tacony-Frankford Watershed Partnership. Healthy watersheds provide habitat for plants and animals, clean water for people and wildlife, and recreational opportunities. Here are some pictures from Tacony-Frankford Watershed Partnership of people actively engaged in their watershed. So they're taking ownership, and that's what I'm inviting everyone here to do. I want to thank Deborah Lamb and Tacony-Frankford Watershed Partnership for providing some of the illustrations used here, and Brad Kunzman, Penn State Extension, for facilitating this project. Thanks, and thank you for participating and checking out this presentation. I'm done.